Do the globalists support the Iran nuclear deal to force the covenant with the many on Israel? Why does the USA and its current administration support the so-called Iran nuclear deal? On the face of it, it seems counterintuitive to what's in the best interest of the world. In a moment of candor, President Obama actually admitted back during the negotiation of the deal that Iran would have the ability to make nuclear weapons by the year 2027 under the best circumstances of the deal. Not only to make them, but to deliver them. Neither the old deal nor the new one proposed limits Iran's ability to construct rockets to fire warheads anywhere in the world. So we have to ask, why do it? As you are about to find out, our opinion is that this deal is being brought about to support or even force an eventual peace deal in the Middle East, one that will cause Israel to disarm itself and lead to the eventual Gog of Magog invasion of the Holy Land. So hang on to your hats. We're going to unpack the hidden agenda behind the Iran nuclear deal. Iran is a terrorist supporting organization, chanting death to USA, death to Israel, and supporting groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis in Yemen, all known terrorist organizations. Why are they rewarded with both the okay to make and possess nukes by 2027, or probably sooner, and also why are they being rewarded with billions of dollars to essentially fund those weapon developments? It's almost as if someone wants Iran to possess those weapons for nefarious purposes, doesn't it? Is there a globalist agenda behind this? Well, in their defense, we should let the USA government answer the why question. Here is what Obama said back when he originally negotiated the deal. Quote, "I'm hearing a lot of talking points being repeated about this being a bad deal. This is a historically bad deal. This will threaten Israel and threaten the world, threaten the United States. I mean, there's been a lot of that. What I haven't heard is what is your preferred alternative. And I haven't heard that. And the reason is because there are really only two alternatives here. The issue of Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon is resolved diplomatically through a negotiation, or it's resolved through force, through war. Those are the options." End of quote. On this point, Obama is correct. You either negotiate or you physically stop them. And any common sense person would try to negotiate first. But how you negotiate tells us how bad you really want your objective. And Obama's negotiations tell us exactly what he really wanted. It appears he really wanted Iran to have nuclear weapons. And here is what the USA's Council on Foreign Relations says about this today. Quote, "The Iran Nuclear Agreement, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, is a landmark accord reached between Iran and several world powers, including the United States. Proponents of the deal said it would help prevent a revival of Iran's nuclear weapons program and thereby reduce the prospects of conflict between Iran and its regional rivals, including Israel and Saudi Arabia." Did you notice that? Cutting through the double talk, it's Israel and Saudi Arabia that is the focus. That's what's important to the globalists, those two countries. The site's statement continues by giving the official goals of the present negotiations by the Biden administration. Quote, "The P5+1, and those are the countries trying to negotiate on the Western democracy side, wanted to unwind Iran's nuclear program to the point that if Tehran decided to pursue a nuclear weapon, it would take at least 1 year, giving the world powers time to respond." End of quote. If you're politically motivated and lean left, you hear this and accept it without thinking. If you're politically motivated and lean right, you reject it without even thinking. But if you're like me, you hear that and wonder if all this negotiation is even worth it. What is the agenda behind this? Because it really doesn't make any real sense. Iran entered the deal the first time and broke it, just continuing to develop its nuclear program. You know that. Common sense says it's going to do the same thing again. My goodness, just a week ago, Iran shot missiles into the U.S. consulate in Erbil, Iraq, in the Kurdish region. Does a nation serious about negotiation fire missiles at their negotiating partner? Of course not. It makes the USA look foolish for continuing, but they are continuing. So the question has to be why. Let's examine what the globalist agenda in the JCPOA might be. In previous videos, we have demonstrated that U.S. Presidents Obama, Biden, and to some extent even Trump are all globalists, working for their globalist handlers to assist in the formation of a global one-world government. This means giving all governments a reason to surrender their national sovereignty when the time is right. Much of what we see in the news is directed and orchestrated to make this happen. Everyone needs a lens to view the world through. Our lens is a biblical lens that the globalists are trying to form global government, a government that the Bible calls Mystery Babylon. So what are the most challenging Western democratic countries to get to surrender to this global government? The most challenging countries that they're going to have to get them to willingly surrender to a UN global governance. Well, among the Western powers, certainly the USA is probably number one. Its people are very wealthy and very independent. But Israel might be number two. And in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, with its vast wealth, might be just as difficult to bring into the fold. With that in mind, the globalists have a plan for each nation, we are sure. And that plan for Israel and Saudi Arabia was likely to allow Iran, a loose cannon of a nation, to develop nuclear weapons. This terrorist state, right within easy striking distance of Israel and Saudi Arabia, could then easily give them the incentive to join into some sort of mutual disarmament pact or a mutual protection agreement with its big brother, likely a global government. Now, before we go into further detail about how this is linked to Bible prophecy, I want to give a shout out to those who helped put this together. Jason Lawrence and Michael Brown both provided vast amounts of research, while Fisher Mann, a member of our advisory board, and I discussed this hard question of why. Why are they doing this? When we put on our globalist glasses and think the way that they think, the answers seem like kind of obvious. They need to create threats in order to be able to provide solutions that serve their interests. Nations are not just going to surrender their national sovereignty or weapons without a real and present danger and a solution to that danger. So allowing Iran to arm itself with weapons of mass destruction probably seemed like a good globalist problem to create, a problem that they would then be able to solve. They needed a vehicle to allow this to happen because if the world was doing nothing, absolutely nothing to stop Iran, Israel, the hawks in the USA, and Saudi Arabia would take Iran's program out. But if it looked like you were actually doing something, even though you really weren't doing anything, there would always be the excuse, well, let's see if we can do this through negotiation. In fact, I've heard the current president of the United States use almost those exact words. This would continue, of course, until it's too late. And then that is close to where we are now at this point in history. It is likely too late to stop Iran. The time to do something was back in the Obama administration, but we did nothing. And once Iran has the nuclear capacity to attack Saudi Arabia and Israel, these nations are going to seek protection. And it is our opinion that the globalists will be right there to provide it. Quote, give us your weapons, join our government, and we will protect you. And this is biblical. There is ample evidence in Scripture that this is what happens in the end times. So let's take a look at it. In Isaiah 28, God told the prophet that Israel would sign a covenant with death and the grave in the apparent desire to protect itself. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord, O scoffers, who rule this people who are in Jerusalem, because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we have made a pact. The overwhelming scourge will not reach us when it passes by, for we have made falsehood our refuge, and we have concealed ourselves with deception. So the rulers of Jerusalem will rely on a pact with death and the grave in order to protect themselves from their enemies that they call the overwhelming scourge. God answers this claim. Behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a tested stone, a costly cornerstone for the foundation, firmly placed. He who believes in it will not be disturbed. Who is the cornerstone? Well, why, Jesus, of course. If Israel would just trust in him, they would be protected. But as we know, they won't do that until a lot of bad happens first. In Isaiah, this is what God says is going to happen because they don't trust Jesus. Your covenant with death will be canceled, and your pact with Sheol will not stand. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, then you will become its trampling place. As often as it passes through, it will seize you. For morning after morning it will pass through, any time during the day or night, and it will be sheer terror to understand what it means. So God says Israel will be trampled and seized on a daily basis, and it will be sheer terror. Now in Exodus 23, God told Moses to tell Israel, you shall make no covenant with them or their gods. That is pretty blunt and pretty clear. Israel is to make no covenants with the Gentiles or their gods. And their gods, of course, are the fallen angels. If Israel decides to join Mystery Babylon, the lion with wings, it will be doing both. This will be a heathenistic, atheistic empire controlled behind the scenes by a demonic fallen angel. If you need to confirm this, watch our recent series on Daniel's 4 beasts. Link in the description. So even though Israel is not signing the Iran nuclear deal itself, it is the agreement after that that becomes the problem, joining Mystery Babylon for protection. However, as Isaiah indicated, that protection is just illusionary. Now the invasion of Israel is depicted in Ezekiel 38. Thus says the Lord, it will come about on that day, the thoughts will come into your mind. And here God is speaking directly to the Antichrist. And you will devise an evil plan, and you will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages. I will go up against those who are at rest that live securely, all of them living without walls and having no bars or gates. This is the trampling that Isaiah envisioned. Israel is living securely in unwalled villages, safely, it thought, under the protection of Mystery Babylon and the globalists. But they can't even protect themselves, these globalists, because in a single day, the beast and the 10 kings are going to burn Babylon with fire. The 10 horns which you saw and the beast, these will hate the harlot, that is Mystery Babylon, and will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and will burn her up with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose, and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God be fulfilled. And without their protection, Israel is defenseless before the Antichrist, and they're invaded. Now, the globalists likely don't see this far into the future. They don't foresee their totalitarian government being burned by fire by the Antichrist because the vast majority don't believe in the Bible and don't read it. So their motives in the Iran nuclear deal are simple: to create a threat that makes Israel and Saudi Arabia want to join Mystery Babylon, the global government, and join for their protection. I do believe they are seeing that far into the future. Will this joining Mystery Babylon be the covenant with death spoken of in Isaiah 28? Well, perhaps. In fact, I think it's very likely. But will this joining unto Mystery Babylon be the covenant with the many described in Daniel 9:27? And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. The simple answer is the surprising answer, and that's no. Notice the Antichrist destroys Mystery Babylon, so he isn't their recruiter. He doesn't make this covenant with Mystery Babylon. If you follow this channel, you're probably also aware that we don't think the Antichrist is the he in this verse. And we don't think the covenant of the many is any type of peace treaty. No, we think it's something quite different. That's the first event in the 70th week of Daniel, or as it's often called, the tribulation. So click right here to see what we think the covenant is that launches the tribulation, who the he really is, and what the first event in the 70th week of Daniel will be. Till then, this is Nelson, and we'll see you there.